We think that the central nervous system, the brain, is the boss that defines how we feel. But would you believe me if I told you that your heart can train your brain to feel calm? Luckily, this isn't about beliefs. This scientific phenomenon is called cardiac coherence. It has a major impact on your health and connects spirituality and science. That's why I firmly believe you need to know about it. I'm Dr. Borja Bandera, a physician specializing in endocrinology and nutrition. Today you'll learn how to train your heart so it can train your brain to feel calmer and more focused throughout the day. The best part is, a protocol of just 5 minutes a day will achieve this at zero cost. I'll share it with you at the end of the video. As I was saying, we think of the heart as just a simple muscle pump with only a mechanical function, pumping blood to all the organs and systems. But the heart is much more than that. Just as there is the gut-brain axis, the gut-skin axis, the brain-skin or gut-muscle axis, there is a brain-heart axis, although it would be more accurate to say heart-brain. A two-way, bidirectional communication between the brain and the heart. Normally, you would think that this information always comes from the top down. Isn't the brain usually in charge? The brain talking to the heart, telling it at what speed it should beat, for example. Well, that's not the case. The brain receives many more afferent inputs coming from our heart. In other words, the heart sends more information to the brain than it receives from it. Specifically, messages to the thalamus and to the amygdala. The amygdala helps reduce the fear response and optimize decision-making. What does this mean? It has implications. The heart is continuously informing your brain about your basal physiological state and the level of threat in your environment. The good thing is that we can voluntarily modify that information through very simple actions, like changing our breathing pattern. That's called entering a state of heart coherence or physiological coherence. We could define heart coherence as a state of harmonious synchronization between the heart, brain, and respiratory system. A rhythmic, orderly, and sinusoidal pattern of heart rate variability, a term you should already be familiar with. Even more simply, it's a state of physiological and emotional regulation that consists of coupling and synchronizing the rhythm of breathing with the natural rhythm of the cardiovascular system. In this state, there is better emotional regulation, anxiety decreases significantly in a very short time, stress hormones go down, your parasympathetic system is activated. Remember, it starts the repair processes. Therefore, of course, it's a technique you need to know. But I'm sure you're wondering, Borja, is there really evidence for this? Well, yes, there's very interesting evidence. In patients, for example, with coronary disease, heart coherence training using heart rate variability biofeedback, after just 6 weeks, it improved myocardial flow reserve under mental stress, a critical parameter of coronary, microvascular, and epicardial function. In these other coronary patients, practicing heart coherence reduced hospital readmissions from 25% to 12% and emergency room visits from 35% to 13% in addition to decreasing depressive symptoms. In other words, the chance of hospital readmission for an ischemic event dropped by over half. This 2021 review confirms the effectiveness of this technique in the management of chronic diseases, including hypertension, asthma, depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, pain, and cognitive performance. In the end, chronic stress worsens most chronic diseases, especially those related to psychiatric, autoimmune, rheumatic, or cardiovascular conditions. If you're simply a healthy person and want to improve your cognitive and physical performance, well, it also seems to offer cognitive improvements in attention and memory. For example, in athletes, the technique resulted in reduced anxiety and improvement in autonomic markers, with positive effects that persisted up to 12 weeks after stopping the training. In other words, the effect lasts a long time. Now then, how is this coherence connected to the spiritual world? Because this is fascinating, pay attention. We've said that entering cardiac coherence, and we'll see how to do it in a moment, means synchronizing the functioning of the heart, brain, and respiratory system at a measurable frequency of 0.1 Hz. Well, spiritual practices found in very different and geographically dispersed religions and traditions around the world actually lead us to that state of cardiac coherence, even without knowing what it was. This is fascinating if you think about it. How is it possible that a monk in Tibet, a Sufi in Persia, or a Christian in Europe all reached exactly the same point with such different practices? For example, this study tells us that praying the rosary in Latin or certain Buddhist mantras like Om Mani Padme Hum achieve that precise breathing rhythm indirectly. We know that Buddhist meditation focused on compassion and loving kindness is the oldest protocol for heart coherence. Buddhists have known this for thousands of years. And now we'll see why evoking emotions of this kind further enhances heart coherence. But first, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt that sensation of experiencing a kind of collective energy that moves in unison? I don't know, imagine a soccer or basketball game, or when your team wins the World Cup, or during Holy Week in your city. A lot of people paying attention to something specific. The heart generates an electromagnetic field, actually the most powerful field in the body, much stronger than that of your brain. This field is greatly influenced by our emotional state. And there is some very interesting, although still very preliminary, evidence that these electromagnetic fields influence each other. That is, people in a coherent state can influence the rhythms of those around them. And yes, all of this remains speculative for now. But if you think about it, it could be the scientific basis for why someone or a group gives you good or bad vibes. Or the feeling of calm when holding your newborn child in your arms, or how certain people just by their presence can calm you or make you feel safe, and others make you feel uneasy or insecure. What do you think about this? And now let's get practical. How can you increase cardiac coherence with science? First, you need to understand how it works. In your carotid arteries, right here, you have pressure sensors called baroreceptors. If your blood pressure goes up, the baroreceptors stretch, they sense the pressure, and they send a message to the brain. Hey, slow the heart rate down. The brain activates the vagus nerve, slowing the heart. If the pressure drops, for example, if you're bleeding out, the message is the opposite. This up and down is dynamic and follows a rhythm that's modified by your breathing. If you've noticed, during inhalation, the intrathoracic pressure drops, blood returns to the heart faster, and the heart rate goes up. There's a suction effect. More blood enters the heart, and the heart has to beat more to pump that blood. But during exhalation, the opposite happens. Your heart rate drops, your pulse slows down, and of course, you can't voluntarily change your pulse wave or the speed at which your heart beats, but you can change your breathing, which luckily is the voluntary gateway to controlling the autonomic nervous system. Check out this analogy. Imagine you're pushing someone on a swing. Well, if you push at any random moment, whenever you feel like it, you'll use a lot of energy and the swing won't go very high. But what happens if you push right when the swing reaches its highest point? Well, with minimal effort, you get the maximum height, you take advantage of inertia. Well, when you breathe at 6 cycles per minute, that is, 1 cycle every 10 seconds, the oscillation of your breathing syncs up pretty well with your pulse rhythm. You push your cardiovascular system like a swing right at the moment of its natural oscillation. And that generates, it seems, coherence. What will you feel? First, increased mental calm, since at 6 cycles per minute the brain senses there are no predators or threats nearby. Tachypnea would send a very different message, so the mental noise decreases. Coherence also improves peripheral microcirculation, so you might notice warmer hands or a slight tingling in your extremities. Also, a mental sense of calm alertness, a clear focused state, but without any agitation. So here comes the protocol, which is what we're interested in. How do I do it, Borja? For 5 minutes a day, ideally in the morning to set the tone for the day, we're going to do the following. Sit comfortably with your back straight and upright. There's no need to adopt any specific meditative posture like the lotus position or anything like that. Don't think of this as a spiritual practice, especially if you're not comfortable with it. You can take it to a spiritual level too, that's fine. Place one or both hands over your heart throughout the process, but make sure it's a simple gesture that you can maintain without much physical effort. If you get tired, find a more comfortable position or support your arm. Third, take a slow, steady breath at your resonance frequency. Remember, 6 cycles per minute, which means each inhale should last 5 seconds. And 5 seconds for each exhale. You can do it just through your nose. You don't have to alternate between mouth and nose. Try not to reach a feeling of breathlessness or the need to gasp for air. In that case, shorten the cycle a bit. Fourth, while you're doing that, try to evoke feelings of gratitude, appreciation, compassion, love, and care. Self-induced positive emotions increase cardiac coherence, improving higher cognitive functions, emotional stability, and generating states of calm. How do I do it, Borja? Well, it's not very difficult. I mean, if you stop to think about it, think of something good in your day or something you remember from yesterday. Or be grateful for your health if you have it, for your pet, for your friends. Remember a trip where you had a great time. There are 1,000 ways to do it, and I'm sure you'll find one. When we look at the studies, this technique usually relies on heart rate variability biofeedback monitoring. In other words, they use real-time feedback. What for? to determine if we're heading in the right direction and generating coherence. This practice, when done regularly, allows your nervous system to establish a new baseline, healthier than the previous one. And this, dear viewer, turns out to be deeply therapeutic, whether or not you have a diagnosed illness. Now you know what cardiac coherence is and how to use it daily. If you found this video helpful or enjoyed it, let me know in the comments. And if you didn't like it, let me know in the comments too. It's okay, we're here to keep improving. See you in the next video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, it really helps a lot. A big hug, and let's keep empowering ourselves.